American Red Cross is leading us in our next program. And the American Red Cross has been a great and I hope proud sponsor of the International Dialogs for at least 6 years now, I believe. I think 2012 was the first year that the American Red Cross joined us. They have 4 representatives here. I'm only going to introduce Randy, but I'm going to say hello to Randy Bagwell, and then I'm going to turn it over to him. Please, you can read about Randy in your program booklet. As you know, my introductions are short. But Randy, the program is yours.
Right, on behalf of the American Red Cross, thank you very much for letting us to be here and be a part of this. I would ask that you spend your time doing something else other than reading a bio on me. What I would suggest you do is go out and do an internet search and look at some of the amazing interviews of the person we're going to hear about and you're going to get a chance to talk to this afternoon. Mr. Mohamedou Ould Slahl was born in Mauritania in 1970. He was, in 1988, he won a scholarship to study in Germany. And while there, he studied electroengineering from 1990 to 1995. And then after that, he worked for the German company Bosch. Later in 1999, he moved to Canada. And all of that is significant, but also in the very early 90s, he made a significant decision that would alter the course of his life. So in Germany, he heard about the suffering and sort of the plight of people that were with the communist government that was backed by Russia and Afghanistan. And in the early 90s, he went to sort of see what was going on, and he participated in some of the training with the groups there that were opposed to the Russian backed government in Afghanistan. Why I say that was a fateful decision is you will hear in a minute, and in his words, better than mine. But part of that was in January of 2000, he had left Canada and gone back to visit Senegal, and he was seized in a joint operation between the governments of the United States, Canada, Senegal, and Mauritania. He was released in February, but was then later placed under house arrest that same year. From May 2000 to September 2001, he was able to work while being under house arrest as an administrator, web administrator, and web designer from his home in Mauritania. But in November 2001, just 2 months after the September 11th attacks in the United States in 2001, he was arrested again at his home in Mauritania as part of the rendition program that the U.S. had at the time. He was sent to Jordan, where from 2001 to July of 2000, he was held in a secret prison, interrogated and abused. And then in July of 2002, he was sent to the U.S. prison in Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, where he was again interrogated and abused by CIA agents of the U.S. government. In August of 2002, he was then transferred to the Guantanamo Navy base, or what has become known by everybody as Gitmo, to the detention facility there. And from 2002 until his release, he would spend 14 years of being held prisoner in Guantanamo, where he was subjected to continuous interrogation and interrogated using what the U.S. program at the time was referred to as enhanced interrogation techniques, which honestly are just sort of nice words for government-sanctioned torture. During this time, for many years, he held strong, but finally succumbing to some threats to his family and just years of abuse, they did extract a false confession from him. And then in October of 2016, 14 years of captivity later, a U.S. judge had ordered that he be released, and he was, at that time, released from Guantanamo and sent back to his home country, but he was still subject to house arrest and a travel ban. So today he spends his time writing, and he started that when he was in Guantanamo, and he has a best-selling book that was in the United States called the Guantanamo Diaries. Much of it was heavily redacted when he was able to bring it out, and he has now spent a few years repairing, is probably the right word, to the diary from the redactions. And he's also working on some other writing projects that we'll maybe talk about in a little bit. But if you could, at this time, I'd like you to join me in a welcome to Mohamedou. So I told you I would try to guide you a little bit before we turn it over to the audience. But, you know, I'm going to ask, I was a prosecutor before I was a defense counsel, so I'll ask you non-leading questions to start with. So in your own words, could you begin by just summing up your ordeal? And I know it's a lot, but give us your account of what you went through during your time in Guantanamo.
First, I would like to test. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, I would like to thank you very much and thank this beautiful audience that is in the auditorium. And the second thing, I would like first, in all fairness to the U.S. government, to tell you the logical reason why I fell into the radar of the U.S. intelligence. But let me first close this window because I'm on the street and I could hear the cars. 1 second. So like I said, in all fairness to the U.S. government, I fell in a radar of the U.S. government in a very bizarre event that happened late 98, early 99. So I was called by my cousin, who used to associate with the late Osama bin Laden. And he called me with the phone, a satellite phone that was registered to the late Osama bin Laden. And I was unaware of that. He was discussing with me some family issues. Notably, he wanted me to help him send some money to his sick father. And then the U.S. government started with very weird and wild theories about me and about my involvement. And in this heinous attacks that were happening to civilians, even before 9/11. And I was unaware of all of this. Many years later on, I know all of this. And so the U.S. government tried with the German to arrest me, but it turns out the German told them, we cannot arrest somebody without proof. And receiving a phone from someone who used the phone of someone who is involved in something, it's not a reason. And they tried the same thing when I moved to Canada, and they were not successful to get me arrested. And I don't even think that the United States could have arrested me if I was in the United States. I doubt very much, especially before 9/11. So, an FBI agent later on summed it up to me very neatly and very eloquently. He said, you look like a dog, bark like a dog. You're probably a dog. You're Arab, you're Muslim, you studied West, you speak multiple languages. You must be something. You must be the enemy of this country. And I was, and he was right. Actually, he was right in that unfortunately way the United States look at this part of the world. So there is no justice, there is no people like me. When I was young, I went, of course, to Afghanistan, and that was not really a big deal. I mean, so many people, I went there. I found it very underwhelming, a civil war that was raging on between the Afghans, and everybody was involved. The United States was heavily involved. They were sending money, they were sending weapons that actually I've seen and I used. And I met Americans on the field. So that was not really a big deal. So, but so this whole thing that that someone could be kidnapped and treated this way that I've been treated literally outside the law. It's really very sad, and it's a very bad news for human rights in this part of the world, on for the rule of law, and for those of us in this part of the world who try to seek the help of the United States to establish the rule of law and to curb dictators in this part of the world.
So if I may ask a question here, when we know you were arrested in November of 2001, when was the first time you got to see a judge or somebody to even talk to you from a judicial standpoint?
So 2 weeks after 9/11, I was arrested, interrogated by U.S. officials that came down in Mauritania, and I was released again. And then for some reason they decided to arrest me again on November 20th of 2001. And then after 8 days in prison, they sent me to Jordan. Out of all countries, they sent me to Jordan, a country I've never been to, I've never visited, I never dreamed to visit. I asked them to send me to the U.S. Back then, there was not yet Guantanamo Bay. I asked them to send me to the U.S. because I know from the movies I saw, like Law and Order, and Married with Children, and Murder She Wrote, they have the notion of the rule of law. So I want to go to the U.S. to have at least something resembling a fair trial. But they said no. The United States, ironically, wants you everywhere but the United States. And that says it all, you know.
So you didn't see a judge in your country. You didn't get a chance to see anybody, a judge or charges in Jordan or Afghanistan. So ultimately, I guess at Guantanamo, eventually you had an opportunity to at least see a courtroom and be faced with some charges. I would take it because a judge eventually ordered your release.
That is correct. It took 9 years.
9 years.
In prison for me to see a judge on a link like this. Actually, I never seen the inside of the courtroom. And that was all because of my lawyers and people who supported me, and people who believe in the rule of law and believe that humans, no matter who they are, they deserve a fair trial. And the government was not interested in anything, you know, in going to any court. And that they wouldn't even charge the commissions. And so we filed actually a habeas corpus. And I got my chance to be heard by a judge. And you ordered my release. And the government refused to release me. Yeah. They appealed. And it was really very sad. I had to languish in prison for 6 more years, more than 6 years, for the government to release me.
So that long after the judge ordered you released before they finally released you. Are you
Correct.
Yeah. Are you still allowed? Are you allowed to now travel out of the country? Are you still under house arrest?
I'm still under house arrest, and I've been fighting this ever since my release, because you know it's. Of course, I'm from Mauritania, but I do understand the rule of law. I do understand that you cannot be punished without a judge, without going to court, and that was my argument. And so far, I'm not successful because the law has no role in this country. Very much when government has a stake.
So I don't want to waste this valuable opportunity we have with you by asking all the questions. I could talk to you for hours, but I do want to open it up to the group here.
You can keep asking questions. I just if any of you are on your cell phones, on the internet, please shut them off because that could be affecting our connection. And so shut your cell phones off, don't be on the internet, completely off, and see if you speed it up. Okay, turn your cell phones off. Thank you very much.
So, and if you do have a question, look, I don't want to monopolize the time. Please feel free to ask a question. Let us know. You will need to use the microphone so that he could hear you. So we have people around to do that. But while you're thinking about that and shutting off your electronic devices, let me continue on a little bit. I am reading about your story, Mohamedou. I saw that you eventually you did provide a confession to some charges that they wanted you to confess to. At what point in your captivity was that?
So they brought the professionals from Chicago Police Department. They brought a lieutenant by the name of Richard Zuli, and he took over my case. And he was bragging that he knows these kind of people back home. You know, those hard-headed, seasoned criminal. Apparently, I was one of them. And then he put together this torture program, for 70 days. And then I was getting used to the torture, like sleep deprivation, sexual assault, deprivation of food, and 24/7 interrogation. And then he came to me one day, he said he's going to arrest my mother. And that, because I know, because I've seen Afghanistan, they arresting old people in order for their children to themselves in. So, and I was completely broken, honestly. And then I told him, I sign anything you give me, anything. And then they brought this very wild accusation of me involved in Millennium Plot. And I signed it. And I signed it. And then later on, they brought the expert. They said that it made no sense. My confession made no sense to them. And they had to bring polygraph test. And then they put me on polygraph not once, twice. Because when I passed, the team said no. They were fighting. And then they said to put him again on the same polygraph. And then I passed again.
Yeah, so even the polygraph showed that your confession that they had you sign was not true.
Yes, correct.
So,
but it didn't make a difference to me anyway back then.
Right. Was while you were held at Guantanamo or at any of the facilities, were you able at all to communicate with your family?
No, not for the first 9 years. After that, I was allowed to communicate with them by phone. So I was allowed every once in a while to talk to my family.
After the confession? Yeah.
Of course, many years after that, many years.
I read somewhere that you said they asked you a question of what was the worst part about being confined for those 14 years. And in your answer, you talked about family. So I don't know if you've had thoughts about that now, but again, what do you think the worst part for you, out of all the terrible things that happened to you during that time, what was the worst thing that really was to you in those 14 years?
Randy, it's very hard to explain to anyone who is not been, in prison, how it feels to be taken away from your family, from your work, from your life, and
in the blink of an eye, everything crumbles. It's just like you're dead, but you are not dead. And everything is controlled. What you eat, when you eat, whom you see, when you see them, and when they take you away, where they take you away, every aspect of your life is under someone else's control. And one of the things that really hurt me a lot is the feeling of guilt, this guilt feeling toward my family that I failed them. I wasn't careful enough, and I really, that's the first thing when they called me after 9 years. I said, please forgive me. And then I was crying. I said, forgive me what I did to you. But my family also was feeling the same things, guilty too, about this abandonment, but neither of us meant any of this, so.
So prior to this happening, growing up where you did you believe that something like this could happen to you, where you were taken and there was no rule of law, there was no justice, you were just taken? Did you believe that could happen to you?
No. I had many opportunities to run away. I could have gone back to Canada, like using a passport or laissez-passer, or get myself smuggled into Germany or into Europe and then ask for asylum. But I never thought, or even hide in the country. But I never thought that if you had done nothing, you could be kidnapped and tortured for something you didn't do. It never crossed my mind. I always thought, okay, they will figure out I'm not the guy. They will chill. That's how it works.